Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Porter with another installment of how to not only survive but thrive during COVID-19. In this installment, we will be working with the hand model of the brain to help you understand what might be going on for you in your brain during these stressful times, and why sometimes your behavior gets really concerning to you, or maybe to your parents. But either way, let's get started with the hand model of the brain. So, the first part of the brain is the palm, and that is your brain stem. The brain stem, for those of you who do not remember science class, is responsible for all your autonomic nervous system and autonomic needs that go on in your body, like your heart rate, like your respiration rate, or your breathing rate. Even your digestion is done through your brainstem. A lot of what goes on in our body automatically, in fact, everything that goes on automatically is housed in your brainstem. In your brainstem, you have this organ that's called your thalamus. Your thalamus is like your relay system in your brain. It takes in all the sensory input from your eyes, from your ears, from your nose, and so on, and it basically decides where it's going to go next. So, for example, if the thalamus decides this is a high alert situation, it sends the information directly into this almond-shaped organ. You actually have two of them in your brain, called the amygdala. The amygdala is actually what we would call the emotional center of the brain. It's part of the limbic system. The amygdala is, so if I took my finger and I put it in my ear, don't actually do this at home, and put the other one in my eye, and then actually brought the two lines down, this is about where my amygdala would be inside my brain. There's one on the left side, there's one on the right side. Those are what we call responsible for emotional mind. Then there's times where the thalamus will say, no, this information from the eyes, from the ears, can actually go into the higher cortex. The higher cortex is the most evolved part of your brain. It's responsible for all rational thought. All reasonable thinking comes from your higher cortex. There's one more area, which is right here in my nail beds, that's called your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is like the conductor of the orchestra. It is what's responsible for behavior regulation and emotional regulation and keeping things in harmony, keeping things organized. Sometimes what happens is when we have the brainstem sending information to the amygdala, and then we have the higher cortex. Sometimes when the thalamus determines that this information is so important, there's maybe such a big threat, that we actually go directly to the amygdala, and there's a lot of energy being sent into this area. What ends up happening is what Dan Siegel calls flipping your lid. And that's when your higher cortex, the part that's responsible for rational mind, completely goes offline. And it is like you are running around, you could say proverbial chicken with your head cut off, or you could just say running around like your rational mind is actually sitting next to you on the table. So I'm sure all of you have had this feeling where either you're giving a speech or a presentation, or you're about to do something and you're super anxious and you feel like you just can't think straight. Other people have probably had this feeling where they're so angry or so upset about something that, again, they cannot think clearly. Those are moments where you've flipped your lid and you really are caught in your emotional mind. The goal always is to keep these all integrated together so you're functioning out of your wise mind. So again, emotional mind, rational mind, the two together, wise mind. And we want to, as much as possible, always stay in wise mind. So let me give you one more component to all of this, because some of you may be wondering, how does our brain, this is all the upstairs, how does our brain actually attach into our body? So we go from the brainstem, right back here in the back of your neck, there's a spinal column. There's also this nerve that is really super important. Some of you may already know it, again, from science class or health class. It's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve has a really important job. It has two different branches, and it goes to all your organs. And on one side of the branch is what's called the sympathetic nervous system, which is all responsible for fight or flight or freeze. So whenever you're really ramped up, it's because your system has determined there's some type of threat in the environment, and you have to prepare yourself. Your body actually automatically prepares itself. There's different chemicals that get dumped into your body, and it prepares you to fight or run away, or sometimes you even actually freeze. That's one side of what happens with the vagus nerve, or your autonomic nervous system. The other side is what's called your parasympathetic nervous system, and it runs to all your organs as well, but this side actually is responsible for resting and digesting. So what happens, guys, if your system goes into sympathetic, your sympathetic nervous system is alerted, your emotional center is also alerted, and there's a lot of chemicals that get dumped into your body. And guess what? Once that happens, we literally have to just recognize, like, oh, there it is again. My heart is beating strong. And really, that's a good message. The message is, wow, I have a good, strong heart. It's beating and it's accelerating because my body has gone into this fight, flight, or freeze response. It may throw off other things, like you start to feel your muscles tense, or glucose is dumping into your muscles to prepare you, again, to fight or flight. So once that happens, we just have to recognize those symptoms. And then one key piece, because we go from here to get back integrated, one key piece to remember today is just by naming what's happening. Oh, there it is again. There's my body. Oh, my heart is beating. Oh, my muscles feel really tight and I'm starting to feel shaky. Or, ooh, I got that pit in my stomach. Or, oh, wow, I can't seem to catch my breath. Whatever you notice going on in your body during those times of high alert, good to name it. Because once you name it, you can tame it. Meaning, as I start to name it, I'm pushing the energy back into my rational mind, back into my higher cortex. I'm reintegrating my brain. So, what's another way? In our last installment, we talked about breathing. You'll notice that when you're in high alert, your respiration is short, shallow, and fast, fast, fast to keep you going. So the minute you consciously shift gears into long, slow, deep breaths, that also helps to reintegrate your brain. So those are two ways. One, keep working on your breathing as always. And the second way, now that you have a good understanding how your brain works, is to do something that's going to shift you from emotional mind into higher cortex, into rational thought, and reintegrate your brain. One more technique I'll give you today before we sign off is the idea of literally grounding yourself in your sensory system. Again, you're using naming, but you're using your senses. So I may start by using 5 things that I see in the room. I see a camera, I see a wall, I see a TV, I see a light, I see a microphone. So by doing that, I'm using my vision to ground me in this present moment. If you've ever noticed you're thinking when you're really anxious, you're thinking about the future. So the minute you bring your thoughts back to this present moment and you're using your sensory system to ground you in the here and now, you're shifting from your emotional center back into your integrated mind. So I may go from vision, then I may say, what am I hearing? Oh, I'm hearing a TV set in the distance. I'm hearing cars. I'm hearing a sound machine. I'm hearing my own heartbeat right now. And that may be bringing me back home. So I may now be focusing not only on the external, but I may be actually focusing on the internal as well. Again, the more I can be integrated in this moment, in this present here and now, integrated with my mind and my body, the calmer I'm going to start to feel. And guess what, guys? In this time of uncertainty, in this time of unpredictability, it's a good day to learn how to stay integrated and in harmony with not only your environment, but with yourself. So that brings us to the end of another episode or installment of how to not only survive, but to thrive during COVID-19. Until next time, you guys be safe, take care, and be well. Talk to you soon.